Alrighty, so where we left off on part 2 of the Menendez brothers, how they got caught. Now, if you remember in part 1, if you saw the actual series, we broke down that the legal ramifications of why they're in headlines now. The DA has a new hearing set for November 29th in regards to hearing new evidence regarding their case. Now, if you saw the series, the Netflix series, Monsters, the Menendez brothers, and if you don't know what it looks like, let me show you. So once again, this is the actual Netflix series, Eric and Lyles, the Menendez story. Baby, this series, immaculate. Now, mind you, we only made it episode 5, so we have to finish episode 5, but it was a lot to unpack. I do want to place a trigger warning here because this series, it actually is triggering, and, watch it at your own leisure and at your own advice. And if you remember watching the series, Eric told his therapist everything, which essentially led to them getting caught. And the question that a lot of people had were, can your therapist actually break therapist-client privilege? And I mentioned in part 1, they actually can. It just depends on the legal ramifications in the state legislature of the state that they practice in. And if you don't know what that looks like, let me show you. Now, this is directly from the American Psychology Association, that's the APA, and they have a list of certain requirements and ethical principles of psychologists and code of conduct. Now, this is pulled from section 4.05b, and it states, psychologists disclose confidential information without the consent of the individual only as mandated by law and where permitted by law for a valid of purpose reasons such as, number 1, provide needed professional services, number 2, obtain appropriate professional consultations, 3, protect the client, patient, psychologist, or others from harm, or 4, obtain payment for services from a client or patient in which instant disclosure is limited to the minimum that is necessary to achieve that purpose. Now, keep in mind, as I mentioned, it does depend on the state that your therapist not only resides in as well as practices in. Most states have a legislation regarding confidentiality disclosures, and it's important that not only your therapist knows, but also you're aware of the regulations based on your location. Now, the National Conference of State Legislators provides guidance of confidentiality regulations for all of the states. As of this writing, where this is pulled from the APA, there are a handful of states that have no duty to report if there is concern about violence. However, majority of the states have a mandatory duty to warn and or report, one that is permissive but not obligatory, meaning there's only a handful of states to where any of it, if you are a danger to yourself or to other people or plan to be a danger to yourself or other people, where your therapist has to actually report it. Now, in this case, we're going to pull from the state of California since that's where the crime happened at in terms of Eric and Lyle Menendez. So in California, a therapist may be legally required to tell the police if they believe their patient poses a serious threat of violence to another person. Now, the state precedent case of this is from Tarasoff versus Regents of the University of California. Now, typically counselors in the state of California, they are required to tell the police or the potential victim what a patient has told them if they believe their client may hurt someone else in the future. Now, where Eric and Lyles Menendez come into play is that when Eric told his counselor said, oh, well, I'm bound by law, I can't say anything. Now, where the counselor said, oh, I'm going to protect me at all costs, is he started recording their sessions. And what happened next was just diabolical. So the therapist starts recording Eric and Lyles Menendez sessions, and he had this side piece, i.e. was his assistant that worked in the therapist's office. The therapist was cheating on his wife with said side piece. And he told the side piece, put these recordings up somewhere safe. The therapist then tells the side piece, oh, I'm going to leave my wife. That was the story he was running with. Until one night, the therapist and the side piece got into an argument. And the therapist said, oh, I'm not leaving my wife. You could just be mad about it. And the side piece said, oh, really? Huh. Let me take these recordings down to the police station. And so she did. And the case by that point was bigger than life at this point during the late 80s, early 90s. And obviously Beverly Hills police was trying to figure it out, because the story up until that point was the parents were unalived by the mob. That was the story. And once the police station got those tapes, the investigators, the district attorney, baby, it was all downhill from there. But this poses the question in regards to not only the new evidence that's being presented, but how the story was painted in the series, as well as in the actual court proceedings. The question that remains, now that we know, or at least now that it's being said, because there's, until we actually hear the evidence at the actual hearing, we don't know what's true and what's false. Are Eric and Lyles really the monsters that the media painted them out to be, considering if what they said was true? But I'm going to be interested and keep up with this case, because I'm interested to see what they actually have, because from my understanding, it's a photo that was sent from Eric or Lyles to their cousin or family member regarding the alleged abuse. So we going to see, and I'll keep y'all posted.